When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous.
After Japanese planes bombed Pearl Harbor, the United States soon entered World War II. With the tension going around, the Japanese Americans in the US now looked like the enemy. The government made moves which were known to be military necessity. Around 127,000 Japanese Americans lived in the United States, and they were mostly in Washington, Oregon, and California. Due to the military necessity, Japanese Americans were moved to concentration camps away from the West Coast. About 40% of Japanese Americans made up the population in Hawaii, and so the government took action to control the problem. Leaders such as community leaders were sent away to detention camps. As for other leaders in the West Coast, they were arrested and detained. Other leaders in the Midwest, East, and South remained at home in fear of the news. The United States military dismissed soldiers or gave tasks not related to the war who were Japanese Americans. Many Japanese Americans who had jobs were fired due to this suspicion being spread around. The government started to draft for World War II, but Japanese Americans were not included due to being listed as enemy aliens. Anti-Japanese rumors started to blaze throughout the United States, and Japanese Americans knew they would deal with the consequences they didn't do. President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, which gave Japanese Americans 3 weeks to settle areas out of the West Coast. This order was pushed, known as a voluntary evacuation. The FBI started to search Japanese Americans more frequently, and anti-Japanese propaganda began to unleash rapidly throughout the country. The civilian exclusion order was posted and sent around to notify Japanese Americans that they would have 7 days prior notice before they would be forcefully removed from their area. This led to many Japanese American families to pack only what they could easily carry. The order also made many families suffer economically. There are 25 Justice Department camps that held around 7,000 Japanese Americans. These camps were different from the WRA concentration camps. The Justice Department camps were administered by the United States Justice Department. These camps were set up to hold people in the community who were listed as dangerous. The people were known to be community leaders within the Japanese American community, and they were taken away without any due process days and months after the Pearl Harbor attack. While the government was building the concentration camps, Japanese Americans were sent to sites called assembly centers before being able to move to the camps. Japanese Americans were forced to live in horse stalls with the scent of odor and the actual odor around them. The centers were overcrowded with tight security, which led many Japanese Americans to realize the outcome they will be facing in the future. The War Relocation Authority referred to concentration camps as relocation centers. This term was used to give the camps a cover-up for the unconstitutional imprisonment. More than 120,000 Japanese Americans were moved to the concentration camps and were left to live their everyday life at these camps. The camps had barriers surrounding the camp, and there was tight armed security watching every moment. English was the official language spoken at the camps, and wartime patriotism was encouraged and spread around. Patriotism was taught throughout camp activities as well as education for kids and adults. Programs were put into place which taught about Americanization. Many Japanese Americans showed their patriotism. Many men demonstrated their loyalty by volunteering to be a part of the war and fight for the United States. Others showed cooperation towards the authorities, and administration showed their loyalty towards the government. Although showing loyalty and patriotism, many requests were denied. This slowly led to uprisings and conflicts between the Japanese Americans and the administrators of the camps. During all this commotion, many Japanese women and children were given the opportunity to be deported back to Japan. After concentration camps started to close in 1945 to 1946, there was a mass departure of Japanese Americans. Many Japanese Americans chose to go back towards the West Coast, even though some had no claim to a home or property. The Japanese Americans began to face a challenge of discrimination when returning from the concentration camps. In rural locations, protests and boycotts were against the Japanese community, and terrorist incidents began to take place. Some Japanese Americans who had owned land now faced the difficulty of seeing their land being taken and used for shopping centers and other developments. Those who returned to the urban areas faced the hostile act of discrimination as well. There was also a difficulty of lack of housing and jobs. Many families came back to find many changes and had to live in hostels and trailer camps. Housing in certain towns were restricted and showed discrimination towards Japanese Americans.